Okay, so while they're passing out food, let's see, we got everybody. I've been harassed by how long are you going to talk tonight? Is this a 5-minute presentation? That's so. Those that have heard me before, no longer than 2 hours. So I had to laugh. Mike Korb had about 70 slides this morning. 63, and I have 65. So I can do better than Mike Korb. So one of the things I've learned over time is the best presentation follows a 10-20-30 rule. That's 10 slides, 20 font minimum, and 30 minutes. So I can tell you I violated all these. I have 65 slides. I probably have used 16 font, and I'm going to take longer than 30 minutes. But my spouse has tolerated so many of these and told me how bad the keynotes have been and how boring they have been to the spouses that I endeavor to try to be at least somewhat entertaining as well as get content along. So I'm up here and I still have my champagne while I'm talking too. So hopefully everybody can hear me. If you can't, please yell. There'll be a little bit of overlap here from my talks because we're talking about the history of the Institute. So obviously everybody had a little bit that touched upon this. There's some overlap. It's interesting. Nobody's dates agree, and you would think we would know what these dates were, but you'll see some different dates in here. I was looking on the SME website the other day, and they had a little thing on mining history, and I'm thinking, I'm the mining history guy for SME. I just wrote 4 columns for Mining Engineering Magazine, and the dates don't agree on what I'm looking at on their website. And we all know, if it's on the web, it is right. So, first thing I want to tell you is take a look here. This is the Institute flag that you're seeing here in front of us. This is the first time anyone has seen the Institute flag in over 100 years. The Institute flag was carried to Japan, to Mexico, to all these different places, and somewhere over time the Institute flag was forgotten. It lost, like many of our things, if you've been reading my SME columns, 90% of our memorabilia is gone. The Institute flag is one of those things. Michelle and I have recreated the Institute flag. We have 2 copies of this Institute flag. One of these flags will go to Penn Anthracite because they've agreed to be the local caretakers of the AIME legacy. The other one will go to SME, where David assures me that it's going to hang in the Stuart Wallace Library in a prominent place.
Right now it's in a cardboard box. Mark, Ron, Jim, let me know if you're interested. For a fee, I can get it to your place. Are you paying the fee? No. That's not how it works, Jim.
Guys, all this bantering on the floor doesn't count as my time. So just remember this. Okay, let's see, which way am I going here? Here we go. Okay, so this slide, I've used this slide. Some people, they're familiar with this. Those are my grandparents over here on the left side. My grandfather is in the right, and my grandmother is in the right in the bottom picture. You're in the coal fields. Where do you get your picture taken? My grandmother and her sisters went out to the slate dump. It's the most scenic place in the coal field to go get your picture taken. And my grandfather's there with one of his brothers. So obviously, my other grandfather also was a coal miner. I have not found any pictures of him in mining gear, so I don't have a picture of him. But so that's my dad's father and my dad's grandmother. And there you see me as a new graduate from Penn State with no idea where I was going in life. I just was graduating as a mining engineer. And I did have long hair. I cut off my mustache for graduation though, Bob. And so I had no idea where I was going. And I went back through and took a look for some pictures of me where I'd been in underground mines and everything. It's amazing. You guys who have been with me in the field know I take pictures by the ton. I take no pictures of me. And so I just looked, and I had one selfie I took at CSM's Edgar mine, and that other picture is over at Henderson. Who knew at the time when I graduated that ultimately I would wind up as the 2008 SME president? So there I am, my picture on the cover of Mining Engineering magazine. Really a surprise. That was one of the best things in my life. I had a great time. There you see a picture of a group of us, past presidents and future presidents of SME, that we were going to Min Peru in Arequipa, Peru, and David assembled a whole all-star cast because we were also meeting with the Institute of Mining Engineers of Peru, and we went to Arequipa, and then we went on to Machu Picchu. So there's the group in Machu Picchu. Just a small story, Dave was taking care of hotel reservations. And somewhere along the way, Dave managed to screw up. And we showed up in Arequipa, and we had no hotel reservations. Somehow...
Got you something better.
So Mike Karma stepped in. Michael was the Society of Mining Professors, happened to be meeting in Arequipa, and they had made reservations at a nunnery. And Mike said, we have extra space at the nunnery, and we can accommodate you people. So we wound up this esteemed group of presidents, past presidents, future presidents of SME. We wound up at a nunnery. Well, the nunnery was also used as a retreat center. They had to go out and buy towels. They had to go out and buy sheets. It was unbelievable. Cold water, because all the water was heated, solar. It was an unbelievable trip. Best trip I ever had in my life. It was fantastic. Just one of those things. I thought, hey, I can never beat this. Well, the House of Entertainment. Let me tell you, I've actually beat it. I've had a fantastic run as an AIME president. I was president in 2012, president in 2020. Now, don't ask me how I'm the 2020 president when the bulk of my presidency is in 2021. This is just how the numbers run. But so I've been able to repeat my tenure as AIME president. And I'm the one of 9 people that have had multiple terms. One of those was Rossiter Raymond, who had like 4 terms or something like that. The last was David Brunton, who invented the Brunton Pocket Transit, which we typically use for the dead mackerel initiation. That's another story. But that was back in 1909, 1910. So I'm the first guy to repeat in quite a long time. Much to then everybody had to deal with me the second time around. And I know the EDs are just shaking their heads, but such is life. But it was actually, this was nice. So here's a picture with a group of us in, Chico, Montana. We've done some fantastic stuff. I look back at this, so I had my meeting up in Alaska. We got a chance to fly on a bush plane. We took everybody up to the Pebble Project on a helicopter. We got a chance to go up to a steel mill. I started the idea that the 4 societies need to understand what they do together, what the common driver is. So I started field trips. So when I was president the first time, I took everybody up to Alaska, and then we went up to the Pebble Project. So it was interesting. Jim was just telling me tonight that this was the first time he flew on a helicopter, and he had an opportunity to go up there. Unbelievable trip. We've just had a bunch of great trips. Here I am sharing a laugh. I don't remember what all it was. We've had some great trips, unbelievable trips. We've seen a lot. This has been fantastic. I even have, and Mark's over there shaking his head because he recognizes the lone pine at Pebble Beach. So unfortunately, the 3 of us SME guys talked Mark into playing with us, and Mark saw how lousy a golfer I am out at Pebble Beach at one of these trips. Here's a couple more pictures. This was on the Queen Mary up in Park City, Utah, in Wyoming. When Mike was AIME president, we were in Jackson Hole, and we actually rode on the boats down the river, had dinner. We were supposed to eat in teepees. We wound up eating outside, going to the Thumbs Project in California. Unbelievable trips. And all I can say is this is through my my work with...
Too much money, George.
Yeah, I know. This is all through my work with AIME. AIME has been fantastic. I've enjoyed every minute of the time I've spent with AIME. Hopefully I've been able to give back enough to pay AIME for what they've given me. One more trip, and a lot of this somehow involves wine. I'm just going to mention that. So you see us in the barrel room. We had dinner in the barrel room. And actually the bottom picture is actually at an SME meeting where we had a bunch of us from AIME got together for a picture. So it's been fantastic. Just a great time. So let me take it all back to the beginning. So this was back in May 16th, 1871, when 23 mining engineers got together. It's interesting. I heard on the SPE video they put together where I said 22 guys, and that was obviously before I found Rossiter Raymond's little reference where he said, hey, Coriol was there, he just forgot to mark himself down. He didn't care, no big deal, but then he didn't get counted as one of the founders, so it's 23, not 22. But anyhow, these guys got together. It was funny. We were up in Wilkes-Barre and there's, just so people know, pronounce it Wilkes-Barre, Wilkes-Barre. We have a homegrown guy here. Where's Ron at? Ron's back there. Ron says that when he grew up from that neck of the woods, it was Wilkes-Barre. John Voigt's going to tell you it's Wilkes-Barre. So we'll use Wilkes-Barre for purposes of this presentation. But when these guys got together up there in Wilkes-Barre, it was interesting. We were up there back in May for the dedication of the plaque, and we had a congressman there, Matt Cartwright. And we've always talked about these guys getting together and forming AIME in the club room. And Matt Cartwright cut right to the chase. He said, these guys, these 23 guys, they got together in a bar. They sat around and they got drunk and they formed AIME. So all I can tell you is our societies have risen from a discussion in a bar back in 1871. I want to point out something else. So we've had a meal here tonight that some people will say was a good meal, some people will say is a bad meal. My wife will tell you that I've dragged her to these things. She's looking at me like, what are you doing? My wife will tell you that the whole time we've been married, I've been dragging her to all these professional society meetings. Usually I lose weight because the food is so bad at the SME meetings that I don't eat anything and I come home, I lose weight. So all I want to tell you is you got to read what's written here. This whole article, it was written in the Wilkes-Barre paper. Over 10%, what? That's okay. Over 10% of this article is basically says, and I'll read it, a very palatable sandwich. It's talking about the meal, the sandwich that was served when these guys went out. And so it's just hard to believe that 12% of the article is dedicated to the food. We've lost our compass somewhere over the years. Am I okay on that, hon? She says, go on. She doesn't want to hear what I'm going to say. So I continue to use this slide, and I saw that I think Mike Korb used this slide today too. This is my point. It used to be, I remember when I first joined SME, they said 23 mining engineers founded it. We're the guys who started this whole thing. And I continue to emphasize that the word mining engineer was so broad that it meant mining, metallurgy, iron, oil and gas. All these people were considered mining engineers at the time, because if you weren't a mining engineer, what were you? You were a civil engineer. Who wants to be a civil engineer? So this is a book that Darrow, we don't want to hear that right now. Geology, we'll talk about geologists later, because I have something I want to mention with regard to Mr. Rubin here when we get to that point. But so this book was called Coal, Iron, and Oil, or the Practical American Miner. So just remember that. The miner means all of us, okay? You guys, all four societies were represented day one. So you look at what Rossiter Raymond, I adapted this from what he said, and I'm surprised Mike didn't emphasize this, but this just shows you the fields that were covered at that very first meeting. So yeah, there was a bunch of colliery guys there, but you had the copper guys, and Coriol Mike did a very good job on talking about Coriel today. You had Drown, who was about to become the president of Lehigh, the facility that we're at. You had an educator there, and you notice that Mike talked about Rothwell, and Rothwell had already resigned. And his poor student Drinker, who's down there as a soon-to-be graduate, he wanted to graduate, and Rothwell resigns and just says, I'm leaving, and they try to get him to go into some other field, and he says, no, I want to be a mining engineer. He also wound up as a president of Lehigh. And you had the furnace guys, you had Neil and Bramwell there. So just remember, we covered all the fields from day one. Who's this now? Pompelli isn't on this list. I'm getting heckled. Remember, that doesn't count against my time. So I want to point out one thing here. So you see, we had a soon-to-be graduate from Lehigh there at the founding. So when Lehigh shut down their mining program in 1964, they stopped taking freshmen that would have been 61, well, depending on how they ran their program. They stopped taking people into the program about 1961 because they were shutting the program down. You couldn't come in. Tom O'Neill, who was an SME president, who was also the department head at University of Arizona, and also the president of Cleveland Cliffs, back to the iron and steel guys. Tom O'Neill was a 1962 graduate of Lehigh. He got in right while they were shutting the program down, when it was closed to any new entrants. So Tom was one of the last guys that got in there. So it's just interesting that here we are at Lehigh University. We bracket Lehigh at the front end, and we bracket Lehigh at the back end.
Still graduate
Thank you, John. Okay, so I just want to point out that the very first president was Dave Thomas. And the idea was, Dave Thomas wasn't a guy with a college degree. He wasn't educated at Freeburg or one of these other places like everybody else. The whole idea was to show that this is an encompassing organization, that if you have practical experience, you're a practical extractives industry person, you belong. He was our first president. He's also called the father of the American iron industry because he basically developed anthracite pig iron back in the day. The hot blast to smelt iron ore with anthracite coal. And we should also mention he was our first honorary member, and the second honorary member was Sir Lothian Bell. I think most people heard me make the comment that I understand why David Thomas tried to resign, but we won't go down that road. If you think Pennsylvania anthracite, and we have a bag of it here for anybody that wants to take home a piece of Pennsylvania anthracite. We have a whole bag, feel free to grab a piece. But if you think Pennsylvania anthracite is a dead industry, I was just at AIST Tech here in 2021 in Nashville just a few months ago. And two of Ron's exhibitors there are Black Chalk Coal Corp and Reading Anthracite. Reading Anthracite was founded in 1871, the same year AIME was founded. And they're continuing to exhibit at one of our member society meetings. They're still selling anthracite into the steel industry. So just remember that. Anthracite is very relevant. And you could, if you took a piece of this, you could give it to Ron and help out the steel industry. Okay, meetings in Bethlehem. I just want to mention that we're here. This is our fourth time to come to Bethlehem. We were here for the first technical meeting, hypothetically, in 1871. We came back in 1886. We came back in 1906, and now we're back here for the fourth time. That's a long period of time to miss. It's a shame. So, a couple things here. John Fritz was the General Committee Chairman in both 1886 and 1906. It's interesting. We were in the building we were in, right directly across the street was the John Fritz Laboratory. John Fritz in 1910 financed the College of Business for Lehigh. He was a famous steel guy, and he was really really supported Lehigh University. I should also mention that in 1886, they said the secretary exhibited and explained Wolf benzene burning safety lamps. So I just took a look to see how many Wolf lamps I had on my shelf. I collect stuff, much to my wife's chagrin. And I just took a look, and I happened to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had 5 Wolf lamps up on my shelf, 2 of which probably date back to that time frame, 1886, because they're both without magnetic locks, so they're pretty old. The John Fritz Medal, I wanted to mention that he's considered the father of the U.S. steel industry and was president of both AIME and ASME, the mechanicals, and we continue to give his medal to this day through SME. I also wanted to mention that we had dinner at the Sun Inn last night. The reason why we had dinner at the Sun Inn was, if you look, our headquarters in 1886 and 1906 was both at the Sun Inn. So Michelle and I, we were like, wow, the Sun Inn still exists. They still serve meals. We can't stay there, although it would have been interesting to see how many people we could fit, since you can fit 4 to a bed with 2 facing this way and 2 facing that way, as we found out last night. So we could have maybe we could have done it. 64 in there by doing that. Okay, we could have done it. And then I started to think, I wonder why we didn't come here. And we happened to be, you can buy Penn State ice cream here at the Hotel B Creamery. And I saw the Penn State football score from 1889 that you can see up there. And perfect. It was, and maybe that's why we didn't come here for a while, because the Penn State contingent refused to come to Lehigh with their head held low. Who knows? So we have been back to Wilkes-Barre, where it all started, a number of times, and I've just identified some of the trips that we made back to Lehigh, or back to Wilkes-Barre. And Michelle and I originally wanted to take this meeting to Wilkes-Barre, but there were limited accommodations. The mayor assures me that when we're ready for the 175th, that they will already have plans in place that we'll be able to hold the 175th there, and by the 200th it'll be no problem at all. So Michelle's already talking about booking ahead for the 175th. So I just wanted to point out that in 1921, at the semi-centennial, the 50th, they gave every participant a shovel. See that beautiful shovel right there? That's out of my shovel collection, much to my wife's chagrin again, because I have all this stuff laying around. But they gave everybody a shovel. So you may say, why did they give everybody a shovel? If you look down at this graph I have down here on the bottom, that shows coal mining in the U.S. and the methods of mining. And you'll see that in 1920, 100% of the coal in the U.S. was hand-loaded. And you know who the premium shovel was? Wyoming shovel. And so everybody got a Wyoming shovel to take home that was here. And this was slightly after World War I. This was Wyoming shovel actually made shovels for the doughboys in World War I. And that was the shovel that's designed to strap on the back of your pack. So it's a neat little thing. It's one of those things I have in my collection. I'm like Mike Korb. Mike Korb has a bunch of stuff he doesn't know what to do with, and I'm the same problem. So we did at the semi-centennial, we actually did a very impressive 76-page book, and we went around and visited all these anthracite mines. So we're going to do a little bit of that tomorrow. We'll get an opportunity to go see some of these areas, and I hope you've taken advantage and signed up. If not, Michelle has extra space. Come see us. So we've been back to Wilkes-Barre a bunch of times. In 1871, the coal division of SME used to do what they called a field trip. And they did a coal field trip back to Wilkes-Barre, and they presented a plaque to the Penn Anthracite division, or section. I say division, Penn Anthracite slowly taking over the world. I made a joke earlier that they're going to take over SME at some point in time. Dave doesn't want to hear that. But anyhow, this plaque currently sits in the Luzerne County Historical Society Museum. Beautiful plaque. So we gave him that back at the 100th in 1971. We came back. That's actually Tom Falke, who was my professor, one of my professors at Penn State in the middle there, and that's Tom unveiling the plaque at Wilkes-Barre for the 125th. We went back for the 145th. You can see Nikhil Trivedi taking an actual cover off that, and you can see the distinguished group, of which Jim is very much at the front there. You can identify Jim immediately out of the group. But we were all up there for this historical plaque at the site of the former Wyoming Valley Hotel. So here we are just a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago. And this is the plaque unveil on May 16th, the actual 150th anniversary. And that's Mayor Brown right there, giving us a proclamation. You see the proclamation on the right, and you see the past presidents of SME who were there in attendance. And we followed that with a luncheon by the Pennsylvania Anthracite section. So we've asked the Pennsylvania Anthracite section to take responsibility for our plaques, and they have agreed, and we very much appreciate that. And in return, we're donating to them an Institute flag. So thank you, John. Now, you guys may wonder about Wilkes-Barre. What is it about Wilkes-Barre that sticks in my mind? So I want to tell you, what you remember is Planters Peanuts, because Planters Peanuts was founded in Wilkes-Barre. And so there you go. That was one of the, they had Mr. Peanut all around the factory on top of the fence. So there's one of the Mr. Peanuts. The other thing is it was also the birthplace of HBO. So Dave Carnegie was telling me how much he's appreciated HBO because he and his grandmother, right, Dave? They bonded over HBO when Dave was a young buck, and it was really nice. So it means something to some people here in the group. It's also the birthplace, the location of the first jazz festival in America, so they claim. So the first Jazz Fest was in 1951, HBO was in 1972, and they had the first Pennsylvania Arts Festival in 1956. And beside all that is the plaque for us.
I just think they want to cover buildings with bronze plaques.
And they may get there. They may get there. Let me just back up. This is a cute little story. So we went to do the plaque, and they had the plaque covered with butcher paper, and Michelle brought a nice little AIME thing to put over top of it. And Mike Korb was all upset because we gave Mike Korb a bunch of grief. We all went up there for this unveiling, and the Department of Public Works had been there, and they had a couple pieces of cardboard and duct tape, and they had covered the AIME. For the unveiling, that's what they did. We took the duct tape and the cardboard off the wall. It was cute. It was. It was cute. So this is the first plaque that's up there, and I thought there's a lot of work that went into this first plaque, and it just so happened, and I'm not going to go into all this convoluted history of where the annual meeting of AIME was. If you're interested, read the articles I put into SME, into Mining Engineering Magazine. But the 125th anniversary happened to be with TMS out in California. And TMS, I guess, was responsible for the creation of this plaque. And this plaque is phenomenal, but if you don't have the key, you have no idea what this plaque is. You look at it and you really don't know who's who. You might identify Herbert Hoover, but it's really a great plaque, and it ties all four of our member societies together. Everybody's represented here. And this is the key to the bottom. It talks about a miner drilling holes, David Thomas, and all these other things. And I encourage you to learn a little bit more about this. And I also put in here this little blurb. I got to be careful. I don't want to pull I'm not going to pick one up. But anyhow, this brochure that TMS did, I think very much honors the legacy. So Jim, I thank TMS. I'm assuming that you guys did the design on this first one. I'm assuming a lot of other people had input, but thank you. And thank you again for the booklet. So, I throw this slide into everything when Taw's around, because the Columbia guys like to say mining engineering education in the U.S. started with Columbia. And I like to point out that it actually started with the Polytechnic College of the state of Pennsylvania. This is the first college in the U.S. dedicated to mining engineers, which, remember, was a very big encompassing field. These guys didn't last a whole long time, but they were there. And then you got to remember, in 1871, there were very few schools. Most of the graduates were Columbia graduates. So Taw, who's our Columbia graduate here, thank you. No other Columbia graduates, right? Because I like to tease Taw about this.
Sure. I don't see your school up there.
I know. My school's at the very bottom.
Maybe we were the first accredited.
No, but you can see that virtually everybody in the U.S., Columbia had 402 graduates, and that's 1993 stats. So most people were graduates of Columbia School of Mines. But this just shows you the state of the industry. Most of the guys, and I think Mike Korb addressed this today, most of the founders were educated in Europe. That's where they went for their mining engineering education. And that's just how it was. I had to throw this thing in here for ICS because ICS was actually founded in Shenandoah, PA, up near toward Wilkes-Barre. And I can tell you that my grandfather was a mine foreman, mine superintendent, and one of the things I inherited through my dad was my grandfather's ICS books on mining engineering education. So that's where he learned mine ventilation and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to mention that they had a role of professional societies, and this is the objectives of SME, or AIME, was the economic production and safety and welfare of those employed. But I want to point out, we talk about ES&G today. We were doing ES&G back in 1871. The very first technical committee that was created was waste and coal mining, sustainability. And two of the 5 papers were on mine ventilation, which is a health and safety topic. Second meeting, mine ventilation again. And then we had a paper on ethics. This is social and governance. So we've been doing ES&G since the first meeting. The problem is we never called it ES&G, but we've been doing it, and we continue to do it in all of our 4 member societies. Women in AIME. And I'm jumping around a little bit here, but these are interesting topics. How am I doing time-wise, Michelle? I'm fine. So I just wanted to mention, this is important. In 1879, we were the first professional society that let women sit on the banquet floor. We should be proud of that. The civils claimed to be older than us and all this, but we were the first that actually said, wow, women can sit on the banquet floor with the men. This is very progressive. Barb talked about Ellen Swallow Richards. It took a while. It took 15 years to let the second woman join the society, and she happened to be Lena Stoiber, and they called her Captain Jack or Jack Pants. She was a miner's miner, and it's unbelievable. She's a whole nother story. She's Ellen Swallow Richards in reverse. This is a lady who could chew tobacco and tell people what to do. But I want to point out there weren't a whole lot of women in mining in our fields. And by 1900, the 12th U.S. Census, there were only, this is self-reporting, there were only 3 women that said they were mining engineers, 11 who said they were surveyors, 248 chemists, assayers, and metallurgists. The first woman didn't go into a mining engineering program until 1911, and she enrolled at Columbia. Again, thank you, Taw.
You're welcome.
And in 1913, we invited Inez Milholland, a suffragist, to be the keynote speaker at our annual meeting. Remember that women didn't have the right to vote until 1919 with the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So this progressive society, who actually let women sit on the banquet floor, invited a suffragist to be their keynote speaker. 1998, Nellie Guernsey became the AIME Executive Director, And in 2010, Deanne Craig became the AIME president. So we've continued this trend going forward. I think that'll make you, Jennifer, wherever you are out here, you'll be the second. So you may ask, where do we stand today? And I just thought I'd throw these statistics up. The member society EDs were kind enough to share these with me. SMEs at about 15%, SPEs at 10, TMS is about 14, and AIST is about 7. Now these don't sound really good. I can tell you that if you ask them the student membership, this is going to be totally skewed the other way, because we have the new people coming in. There's a lot more women. At NIOSH, we do a national survey of the mining population. I threw the results down here just to show you. In mining, there's only 7.5% female total in the workforce. So SMEs, 15% is double what there is in the actual mining workforce, which is pretty commendable. So there's some other statistics down there, but it's interesting. So you see, we've had people talk today about Ellen Swallow Richards and the diversity conference. I just think that we're moving down the right path. And if I didn't say that, my daughter-in-law would kill me. Just so you know, my daughter-in-law is a department head in mining engineering at Virginia Tech. So, Wilkes-Barre started a long tradition of field trips. That first trip to Wilkes-Barre, they went out and visited a number of mines. Day one, every meeting they went someplace. I picked a couple out here. These meetings are phenomenal. If you take the time to go back through and read all this stuff and where they went, it's just unbelievable the trips that were done. If you were a mining professional and you belonged to AIME, this is where you got your education. These people opened up their minds to you. You could go through them. You could see what was being done. It was phenomenal. And the wives went along for the banquet food, I'm sure. I just threw a couple pictures up here. This was in 1899, the 77th meeting in California. This was a 1.5-month meeting. So just figure, you got to commit. Here we commit to go with SME. I've been going to SME meetings forever, and they've reduced the meeting from Monday through Thursday to Monday through Wednesday because people are too busy. Just assume back in this era when you had to commit a month and a half to go on a meeting. But you visited mine sites all over the place. These guys in 1899, they went to Minnesota, Montana, Washington, Oregon, California, and Arizona. Just unbelievable. They traveled 10,000 miles by rail, and we saw today that the rail network in the U.S. at that time, and they took 116 members and spouses. So this was a phenomenal trip, and it's just unbelievable. I threw this picture in just simply because when I saw this picture, this is at Sutter Mill, California, where gold was first discovered. And the first guy you see in this picture is Rossiter Raymond. I mean, you can't help but look at this picture and find Rossiter Raymond. The next picture they show, you look and you can't help but see that's James Douglas, because here's James Douglas, perfect. I mean, that's the James Douglas medal, and it's almost like he was posing for it. These guys know how to fill a photo. On that same trip, they went to the Copper Queen mine in Arizona, and it's interesting. They took everybody 400 foot down, members and spouses, had everything illuminated with candles, and they even put ladders up so the ladies with their dresses could walk up into the stopes and watch the miners actually mining by hand. Just phenomenal. It would be neat to see us do something similar today. And I can tell you, you saw the pictures of the steel mill. We've been through AIME, the AIME board and guests have been through a steel mill and all sorts of things. So AIME's been to the White House. We were important enough to be invited to the White House 3 times way back in the early era. And it's just neat to see that this shows you the importance of mining back then. Now, mining's still important. I was over at Mine Expo here just last month, and there was a past president who was there at Mine Expo. And he was willing to have you have your picture taken with him if you wanted. I declined because I'm a government employee and I don't want to be political, but he was there at Mine Expo. Our members moved a lot. In 1903, the AIME membership was 3,300 members, and 2,250 of them made changes of address in the prior 12 months. Just trying to keep this up to date on a card, filling these little forms out by hand. And so the statement was made, there are 600 men who were as nomadic as the Kyrgyz of the steppes. This is an area in Kazakhstan. This is a fantastic book, Mining Engineers in the American West. Mike Karmas, when he was president of SME, actually used this book for a whole bunch of things. Mike sent me a copy. It's a fabulous book. And it talks about AIME. So here's, we actually got our first building in 1906, the Engineering Society building, because Andrew Carnegie said, look, I'm going to give you guys money. I want you engineering societies to be together. So he offered this to what's called the founder societies today. Naturally, the civils said, no, we don't want to join. So civils didn't join, but the mechanicals, the mining guys, and the electrical guys came together, and Andrew Carnegie built us a building. And here you got a picture with Rossiter Raymond, Andrew Carnegie, and John Fritz at the groundbreaking. This is the key here, and I made a statement in my article that I did for mining engineering. This key actually had gold that was panned at Sutter's Mill included in the key, covered by a piece of glass, and it was a very ornate key. This was the key to unlock the front door. So I made a statement in my mining engineering article, I made a statement to Dave that, wow, if we had that back then, we're so much a more prominent society today, SME, you must have a fabulous key that everybody waits for you to open the door, Dave, in the morning. And Dave told me he has a broken card, one of those security card things that's broken in half that he holds up and opens the door. He burst my bubble. But I'm sure that Mark has a fabulous key to open his door, and Ron has one, and Jim has one, just because Dave doesn't. So I wanted to mention, we ultimately sold that building for just about what we paid to build it, and we moved over to 47th Street. And ultimately, Trump bought the building. So it's the site of Trump World Tower right now. We sold it for $52 million, and AIME's share of the construction was about $500,000. So this is the best return we ever got. And that money went back out to the member societies. It was distributed. So that was our share of it, and it went out to the 4 member societies. This is why they still love us to this day. This is what our old building looked like. It's been restored, very ornate lobby. And that's the Engineering Society's library there at one side. So a couple things that happened over time. I just want to flip up the telegram from William Taft. That when Taft directed the construction of the Panama Canal when he was Roosevelt's Secretary of War, then he became president. And the AIME guys went on 122 members and guests went on a 26-day trip down to look at the construction of the canal. Now, there was a big debate. If you go back and you look at the AIME transactions, you'll see all this debate over whether the canal was in the right place and all this stuff. Why these guys went, I'm a little bit surprised, but they went down to take a look, and they spent time looking at the canal. So they sent him a telegraph. So Taft is going one way down to the canal. They're coming back from the canal. They sent him a note that said, congratulate you on your good plan, splendid management, and satisfactory condition of work. What else do you tell a president? And then he replied to them, it said, it's most satisfactory to have the assurance of men who are experts that the great canal construction has been well planned and is being carried on to a successful completion. You gotta have pride in AIME. This telegram, this handwritten telegram is framed it was in the archives, and I think SME has it hanging on the wall. So AIME didn't have divisions. You can see here, Beth did a great job talking to you about the WAAIMEs. I'm not even going to mention the WAAIMEs. But Pennsylvania Anthracite was formed in 1914. It was a 10th section, local section that was formed. But in 1918, the Institute of Metals Division merged into AIME. And when they merged in, we created our first division, very first division within the organization. So that necessitated a name change that had been proposed 43 years earlier. 43 years ago, in 1876, people said we should be mining and metallurgical engineers. It was voted down because people said mining engineer, that's a metallurgical engineer. Why would you have a redundant name? But once these guys merged in, we had to call ourselves something different. So the next name change came about in '56 when the petroleum, when we actually formed the petroleum, when we broke out the petroleum guys. I'll get to that a little bit later on. So I wanted to mention that AIME has actually experienced 2 pandemics during its life. The first pandemic was the Spanish flu, 1918 to 19, and here we are with COVID, 2020, 2021, 22, 23. I don't know how long this is going to go on. I know all of us have been impacted by this. All of us know someone who's died, may have friends, and it's really has been bad. But if you take a look at this, the Spanish flu was actually a lot worse. You had 655 deaths per 100,000 population, and COVID has only been 203 deaths per 100,000. So really, COVID and the Spanish flu attacked the most younger group, the more healthy group. It's been very different. But I can tell you that in 1918-19, it halted the rise in membership of the Institute. If you look at the Institute, it just flatlined. If you see what's happening today in the membership and the finances for all 4 of our societies, you see the same impact that we saw back then. So this is just a quick summary of what happened. We had membership, we had technical committees that started in 1915, we got into divisions in 1918, those divisions became branches in 1948, constituent societies in 57, and then in 72, AIME said, we're no longer supporting you guys. You have to figure out your own thing. Believe it or not, in 1972, they actually started to raise dues because AIME said we're no longer paying the bill. And they became members, self-supporting, standalone member societies in 1984. Just remember this as we go along. I'd like to do a little bit of a relevance to the various different societies. I just want to point out that AIME's first petroleum paper was in 1871 on the Bradford Oil District of Pennsylvania. And this fits because the very first university degree in petroleum engineering was actually 1915 in University of Pittsburgh. And here, so that's a Pennsylvania tie. And we actually had a technical committee in 1913. So we had the petroleum division, we had the Iron and Steel Institute of Metals division, and petroleum division, then we started in all these different divisions from there on out. A couple things to mention, this bell actually sits on Mark Rubin's credenza in his office. It was given to us by, the founder societies donated money to the University of Leuven for Carillon, as a memorial to all the engineers that died during World War I. And in return, they gave each one of the founder societies one of these bells. If you go to the founder society's offices, you'll see those. Mark happens to have that bell on his credenza. There's a bust of Herbert Hoover that was given to us in 1929 when he became president. That bust is in ASME's office. Yeah, it's in the mechanical's office. So somehow when we left New York, a lot of things got given to a lot of different people. They didn't stay with us. So that bust happens to be in the mechanical's office. So I'm not going to go through these in detail, but there's just a couple things I want to mention. This is all interesting stuff on a timeline, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I just want to mention in 1961, we went into the United Engineering Center, and Herbert Hoover actually did the groundbreaking for that a few years earlier. In 1964, the National Academy of Engineering was established, and AIME was a principal driver in the establishment of the National Academy of Engineering. And the very first president of NAE was a past president of AIME. I'm sure we have some NAE members here, right? John, and who else? Just John? Just John. Okay, so we have an NAE member here. So we actually helped establish that. In 1966, we did OTC. So there's a whole bunch of things that have happened here over time. I should mention that in 1984, the societies were separately incorporated. That really broke them off on their own. In 1991, we tried, AIME, you've heard the discussion of what happens to society, engineering profession. AIME says, we're going to try to do something because we had a volunteer board. So the volunteer board says, we're going to do something about this. So they spent about $2 million on what's called transformations, science, technology, and society. We have these videos still out on our website. I encourage you to look at them, but it shows the limited things we can do as AIME. The work has to be driven by the member societies, and they have to decide what they want to do. And we've changed the structure of AIME, and I think for the better, the member societies have a voice in how we spend money. They probably wouldn't let us do that today. So I'm not going to go through these in any detail. I'm just going to say each one of the organizations has a separate path to get to where they've been today. And I've outlined the paths on each one of these slides. I've shown their different logos, I believe, over time, and the name changes they've undergone. But each one of them's done something a little bit different. And it's interesting. I could take time to go through these, but I don't want to bore the audience. I would say here, so this is the one I do want to come back to. So SPE really has its roots in Anthony Lucas. Anthony Lucas was a mining engineer. I could give a whole presentation on Anthony Lucas. We have John Voigt here. John's a salt guy, and he knows Anthony Lucas and how important he was to the American salt industry. But he's also considered the father of reservoir engineering. Correct, Mark? Yes. So I just want to throw that in. I also want to point out that Tom talked today about the fact that AAPG and SPE are exploring a merger. All I can tell you is don't worry. The geologists aren't as bad as everybody makes them out to be. They've been part of SME for years and years. There's even an exploration geologist sitting over there and another geologist sitting over there. They're all around us. And they're actually not bad guys once you get to know them, Mark. That's all I'm going to say. And then I have SME here with SME's path as well. And I got to go back and I have to update the one for, I have to update their history out because it's wrong what they have out on the web. But everybody knows the web is right. Okay, so really the society started out in 57. 57 they became branches and they were out on their own. So most of the societies, 3 of the 4 societies in 2007 celebrated their 50th anniversary. This just happens to be SME's 50th anniversary. They did a, what do you call this thing? Docu-rama? What do you call the thing, Dave?
I don't know, but I paid $25,000 for it, that's all.
Okay, yeah. But it's diorama, that's what it is, diorama. So there's a diorama. And they had a very gala dinner, black tie dinner, one of the very few times I've gotten up in a tux. And why I'm leaning over there, I have no idea. Dee will tell me this is a horrible picture to use. But anyhow, we had a great time, and that was celebrating the 50 years of the individual society. So this is just a quick recap. We went technical committees, divisions, name changes, branches, field office, constituent societies, self-supporting, and then eventually we got the member societies, which is where we are today. So the organization today, we sort of lie a little bit here. We say about 200,000 members. Actually, we're a little bit less than that and probably a lot less than that right now, but we're 4 member societies, and we're part of the founder societies that include the rest of the group at United Engineering Foundation. I want to just show this because I thought this was interesting. If you look back, AIME was one organization. There was a whole slew of technical committees and stuff like that. Until we actually did branches in 1951, it was virtually impossible to figure out who was who. But when we did branches in 51, this shows you, so you had 3 different branches at that time. SME was 50%, SPE was 23%, and TMS was 27%. So then in 1960, roughly around then, they became constituent societies, so they became very well defined. And I broke 74 and 75 out because that's when AIST was formed as ISS, so you see what the percentage of membership, this is professional membership, gives you an idea what it was then. Then by 1984, we became member societies, so each one of them was separately incorporated. That gives you an idea of what our breakdown was. And you see where we are in 2020, we're obviously an SPE-centric organization. SPE has the largest portion of the membership. Where we're going in 2071, I have no idea. But I do think, and this is just my own personal thoughts, is that at some point these extractive industries relate so well together that we may have a recombination. And AIME may actually be more than what it is today, that perhaps 1, 2, 3, or all 4 societies may do a reverse merger and come back together. I can see the executive directors are all smiling. They don't necessarily agree. They think that's a hilarious concept. But as a volunteer, I can say those things. But I can tell you, I think the proportion of professional membership is going to change. The fact that critical minerals are going to rise, and I just think you're going to see a re-leveling of this over time. So back in 1981, we tried to define what we were. But in 1982, AIME, remember this is after we had member societies. So we had a statement of purpose, and our purpose was to serve as a unifying forum whereby the constituent society associate and cooperate to the extent they choose. If they don't want to talk to each other, that's their decision. We can't force them to the table to talk. We've lived by that statement of purpose, but we've tried to have value. So our vision is to honor our legacy, be a valued partner, and we have a mission, and this just shows our mission. And we continue with that mission to this day. We give 18 awards right now, 3 scholarships, 12 named endowments. And these honor AIME's legacy. So there's James Douglas. I showed you a picture just like that earlier. Daniel Jackling, the Seeley W. Mudd Fund, which gave books when I was an undergrad. Seeley Mudd, after he established this fund in 1929, one of the things was to give books to new graduates on different things. So I have a copy of De Re Metallica, and I have a copy of Free Gold that I got courtesy of the Seeley Mudd Fund. I don't know how many of you noticed when we walked into the building today, we were next to the Seeley G. Mudd chemistry building. That's Seeley W. Mudd's son, and he has, they must have ties back here, and he funded a building here at Lehigh. What else do we do? We're a forum for the member society engagements. We do oral histories, which are fascinating. You heard some of this, if you were at the meeting today, you heard some of the snippets that were utilized in the video. I can tell you that some of these oral histories are actually unbelievable, and they deserve to be listened to. We do milestone recognitions, we do funding, and we do collaborative efforts. Now, I can tell you that I'm about to be a past president. So, way back when, so in 1940, Chief Buckler, who was the Missouri state geologist, he was a past president of AIME, and he made the comment to his colleagues that past presidents are as useless as a dead mackerel. That comment stuck. So a bunch of past presidents got together and they established the Order of the Dead Mackerel, which I am a member of because I'm a past president of AIME, and Kevin someday will be, and Jennifer someday will be. We have Brajendra, we have John, so we have a couple other dead mackerels already here. But this is an office without portfolio, without the right to Social Security, unemployment, or other benefits or privileges, except that of eligibility for membership in the Order of the Dead Mackerel. So I welcome you guys when you join the rest of us dead mackerels. I can tell you that when I was SME president, the day I became SME past president, Dave Carnegie stopped calling me. And Dave Carnegie had no interest in what my thoughts were anymore because so it's nice that AIME at least has the dead mackerel group so we can flop together. So, school, no, you're dead. You can't, when you're dead, you can't school, you have to flop. So we have this role of professional societies and with our buddy Rossiter Raymond. So today the key is value to members. Whether you're AIME, we have to bring value to our 4 member societies. Our 4 member societies have to bring value to their members. The key is working to advance technical developments, production, processing, applications, health and safety, disseminate knowledge, provide networking relationships, personal growth, and lifetime learning. This is where we have to go. I can tell you that we're here to serve the future generations of our members. And so, obviously, I'm a mining guy, so you see my son and my grandchildren in a mining-related setting. My prayer is that I have some future mining engineers here, I hope. We'll see. But I can tell you that we also live on in our publications. So one of the things they said was the objective was to read papers upon and discuss subjects. So we have, these are all unpublished volumes up here on the top of SME proceedings that are in the Linda Hall Library. And there you see Gary Warren and John perusing the stacks at Linda Hall Library. We moved everything to Linda Hall in 1994 when we sold the United Engineering Center. But we've digitized the bulk of this, and everything lives on in the AIME Digital Library, and it also lives on in One Petro, One Mine, AIST Digital Library, and TMS Member Library. And I think this is fantastic that you can find this stuff. It was neat today when Barb put up a couple references to One Mine with things that she found that relate back. I use One Mine all the time, although I go directly to the source to the AIME Digital Library, but this is just a tremendous amount of material. I want to tell you, future challenges, decarbonization. This is just, we've been talking about this today on and off. So here you have a couple pictures of different things. On the bottom, let's see, bottom right, you see a picture of a geothermal power plant producing hydrogen. This is because Camille, whenever we were on a UEF thing the other day, he mentioned this is something that SPE, this is a petroleum technology doing this tapping. This is, you see a piece of green iron that came from a plant in Finland. Where's it at? Sweden. Piece of green iron, although it seems to me to be very shiny to be green, but you see it there. You see at the bottom left here, Anglo-American in South Africa right now is preparing to run a truck on hydrogen within one of their open pits. Their goal is to produce hydrogen on site off of a solar array and power their fleet with hydrogen. Now there's a ton of issues. Bob Schaefer and I participated in a 3-day DOE workshop here just last week talking about the challenges, but I think people are going to get to there. Anglo's putting a fortune into this experiment. The top here, this was a picture at Mine Expo when I was at Mine Expo here a few weeks ago. This is a haul truck that has a trolley system that runs up. So coming out of the pit, you have to understand these huge haul trucks run off of electric motors, and the diesel engine just generates power to run the electric motors. Coming out of the pit, if you can buy green energy or produce green energy, you can raise your trolley system up and come out of the pit instead of on diesel, come out of the pit on electricity. And it's funny, I graduated long ago, more time than I want to tell you when I actually graduated, but at the time they had trains coming out of the pit on trolley. And that all went away. That's obsolete technology. You just run your haul trucks out of the pit. And now here we are looking at this from a sustainable standpoint and putting a trolley on a 300 or 400 ton truck coming out of the pit. We really are going that direction. It's going to be fascinating for the future generations to be involved in this stuff. With that, I'm going to tell you that it's time for some land. Yep. So historically, when you came to an AIME meeting, you got something to take home. I collect some of this stuff. My corp collects it. This is why I have much to my wife's chagrin once again, I have ashtrays, I have trays, I have bottle openers. I have playing cards. If it's been given out at an AIME meeting, I probably have attempted to collect it if I come across it. So we're going to do the same for you. My wife said, this is nice. We should do this for more people. So we're going to give everybody some lanyard. So what we've done here is we have an ornament for everybody you can pick up as you leave. That is I don't know if you can hang it from the tree. I'm going to wind up hanging mine on a wall. But we have the Pennsylvania out of pressed coal with one of our 150th pins on it. And we have one for everybody here. So thank you for coming. You can see here they gave a paperweight in the shape of a pig. They called it a Thomas pig because remember, he was doing pig iron with anthracite. So unfortunately, we didn't have pigs. Michelle and I talked about that, but we decided metal pigs was too complicated. So with that, thank you. Hopefully I have not bored you. I've tried to keep this interesting. And so if you have questions, I'd be more than happy. I encourage you to read all the various articles that we've assembled on the AIME website, which include the columns I've written for Mining Engineering Magazine. And I've had fun. I started this journey. I gave a presentation like this in Alaska, at Alyeska. And I know so much more today than I did back then, but it was just fun. Back then I was just interested in the 22 guys that founded this. I've left that well behind, and I've looked at the history of the organization over time. It's great history, and I really think that we're well poised. Like I say, I've already encouraged Michelle to go ahead and book us in Wilkes-Barre for 200 years. And so we get in on there, and we'll see where it goes. So thank you all.